I have some pre-ready questions, but let's see if we're ready from the audience already. Please use the microphone just because it helps with the recording. Thank you.
It is on. This is for any one of you that feels like they want to answer. Metropolitan areas in Europe are currently experiencing problems of harassment and crime against intelligent vehicles, with people taking advantage of the pedestrian tracking system so they won't hit people to immobilize the vehicles. While obviously Maine experiences everything on a smaller scale, these are still factors that should be recognized. How do you plan to mitigate these situations?
Hit the button. Okay, there we go. Yeah, that's it's funny. I was on, wait a minute, did you call into Maine Calling last week and ask this question? I was on, yeah, we were talking about this last night. So, I was on Maine Calling and somebody asked a very similar question to like harassing autonomous vehicles. The truth is, yeah, I mean, it's gonna happen. How's it gonna be mitigated? Well, there's already measures being put in place. I know that we have spoken to Cruise and Waymo and stuff, and they're starting to see ways in which they can. The standard thing you're seeing here is that they put traffic cones on the Cruise and the Waymo systems, which screws it up and makes it think that it's either run into or there's something wrong. Now they're sending back a signal to headquarters to say, hey, can I proceed forward? And then somebody just clicks it and said, yes, move forward. That's not a problem. As far as actual humans in front of the thing, well, I mean, we've got humans standing in our roadways today, blocking things for some protest or another. I think it's just a matter of, how do we get the authorities involved and move people out of the way? The level of contention against these vehicles certainly is ramping up. But I think the benefits are, too much for us to kind of, just say, okay, we just need to stop. Hopefully that somewhat answered.
And I would add on to that, I think a big piece of that, as with anything that people have contention with, is education. And that's one of the things that we're doing in each of the communities that we're going into. Again, we're taking a little bit different approach than, say, that robo-taxi model. We're actually going into that community. We're holding listening sessions. We're holding educational sessions. We're doing, touch and feel and see this vehicle, come and experience what it's like, to really give them more information about what it is, how it works, and why we're there, and how they can get involved. So I think that's really important as well, because I think that's the more they know, the less they're going to be concerned.
So just quickly adding to that, over 30,000 people a year die in vehicle accidents that are, our fault, not the, wheel fell off or something like that. According to the, the international insurance, whatever that was, conglomerate of love or whatever the heck they're calling themselves now. They're hoping with fully autonomous vehicles on the road that they think that accidents will get down to like 0.03%. That's a pretty significant, savings in lives. So just throwing that in there.
So this was incredibly interesting. I'm currently the cybersecurity advisor assigned to the state of Maine by DHS. I would love to hear more about cybersecurity of the systems, the platform that the vehicles run on, and then the hardening of the software that the system uses. So kind of the secondary and the tertiary systems, the cybersecurity involved.
Yeah, absolutely. So first, I'm going to tell you I'm in business development and technology. I can turn on my cell phone. That's why I need these other systems. So my answer is probably going to be a little bit more limited, but I can definitely get you in touch with someone. What I will say in regards to cybersecurity, we also take a little bit different approach to that. First of all, we have, all of the various security measures in place. We follow a lot of different protocols as it pertains directly to cybersecurity. We also have a little bit different approach in that we do not allow our vehicles to be remote controlled. So that definitely eliminates some of the risk there. What I mean by that, we can monitor those systems, but as far as the vehicle actually operating, I don't have someone sitting in an office somewhere that's able to take control of that vehicle. It's very, very difficult to get control of the vehicle outside of the vehicle. And so that is one of the ways that we're looking at that a little bit differently. Not a complete mitigation, but, hopefully a step in the right direction. Yeah.
First off, Sarah, seems like you have a really fun job and
do.
your passion for your job comes through. My question relates to, it seems like the MPDM system that you use requires a lot of data and processing of that data. Does that happen on board on the vehicle? And is that reliant on the strength of a cell signal? I think you kind of mentioned that in one of your issues with rural applications. Is there something in place for, the loss of data if there's, solar flares that impact our satellite signals? And what is the, I guess, redundancy within the system to accommodate for situations like that?
Yep, absolutely. So we have a very redundant system. We have the LiDAR, the radar, the cameras, they all work separately. We also do have GPS as well. We do require cell service, and that's very important for us. And then we have right now in most of our programs, again, as kind of that backup, we have safety operators that are there now. Now, we're doing a lot of work right now on what it takes to get that driver out of the vehicle or that operator out of the vehicle. In fact, we have one location in Sun City, Arizona, where we are operating without someone in the vehicle. And so we're doing a lot more work on what is required, what areas we can. We know that it's a limitation in some areas, and those are areas that we just wouldn't, at this point in time, be able to operate in, unfortunately. So I will also say we're working with other partners, different cell service partners on how we can look to the future and, find ways to make that work in multiple areas, whether it's expanding 5G coverage or, using some of the different SIMs that they have, just looking at the different ways that we can look at that for the future as well.
Come on, this is your chance.
Something Sarah just brought up. For those safety operators, are you tracking, is there any trends on what percentage of the time they have to intercede in
Yeah.
a certain?
Yep, we do track that. I don't have the percentage on hand. It's different at every site. I will say, a very interesting conversation that I had a couple of weeks ago. I was up in Grand Rapids, Minnesota. There was a Smart AV Summit up there, and we had invited some folks from the city out, from various cities out, and they got to ride and experience our vehicles. And in Grand Rapids, it's a very small town. All of the operators are local. They are so extremely passionate about their job, and they know everything about everything when it comes to what they're doing. They actually compete with each other on having the best shift. And what that means to them is not having to interact with the autonomous system, being able to have a complete ride along the route without any manual intervention whatsoever. They get to about 90 to 96 they've been as high as 96% autonomous operation there, which is huge in a rural area, especially. We do know that, there are some predetermined manual takeovers that have to be done. For example, we're still working on the best ways to navigate roundabouts. It's a challenge for me when I drive, let alone an AV system. So we're still working on how to perfect that with our autonomous vehicles. And so sometimes we do have to take over there. We've talked about railroad crossings in the past. We don't have that problem anymore, but that's been, something in the past that we've had to do. But up there, they've gotten to, as high as 96% autonomous driving. So it's pretty interesting.
I have a quick question for Jonathan. You cited this 80% for subsidy for public transportation. Do you have data for the subsidy on private vehicle transportation?
I guess it depends what you mean by subsidy.
Use the same.
Well, when I say that, I'm
What
saying.
is, would be, that would
Well,
apply to.
So when I say, okay, so we've done a detailed analysis for Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire of, at the system, at individual bus routes. And so when I say subsidy, what I mean is that the cost per ride in terms of the public expenditure to get a person from A to B requires about 80% subsidy. It varies by system. That does not, I don't include in there any sort of public externalities such as greenhouse gas emissions, both on the private side, nor on the public side, nor on the road construction side. So those types of things are equal. Is that?
I think so. I think that's fair answer.
I'll throw out a question that maybe you can have some fun with. I'll be turning 75 in 12 years, Jonathan. So that's the age, right, that you mentioned. So for all the panelists, I guess, crystal ball, will I be able to go to Charlie's Motor Mall in Augusta and buy a autonomous vehicle at that point?
Dale, you're loading us up for a fight and I love it. Go for it. Go for it, Jonathan.
I have no idea. You know, I think the deployments are necessary. I mean, I think we're learning. There's been too much hype in this area, and the reason we really wanted Sarah to come out is we want to see how this works. I mean, you have to start, Dale, and so I don't know when we're going to finish. But I think that it has, as Rick pointed out, the savings in terms of lives, that we have to start. And I do think it provides a mobility solution today. I really wanted May to come out in particular because of their cold weather deployment, which is relevant for all of us in the Northeast. So I'm sorry, that's my less than satisfactory answer.
I would say and this is just an opinion, so it is not a May sponsored answer necessarily. But from what I've seen in the industry, I would say personal vehicle being autonomous, we're probably farther out. You know, that's a long distance. We see a lot of the assisted driving systems right now. You have the lane assist, you have the cruise, you have the, vehicle detection and things like that, which are all tools, but to be able to 100% fully have that operate anywhere, anytime, anyway, probably a little bit more difficult. You know, you think of plopping an autonomous vehicle down in the middle of Chicago. That's a nightmare in my eyes, at least right now. Now, eventually we can get there. What I do think is more feasible is having these autonomous systems, whether it's on buses, whether it's on vehicles like ours, whether it's the robo-taxi world, where you have autonomous vehicles working in specific areas that are a little bit more controlled, where they can come out, they can do the mapping, they can make sure that everything is operable within that area, and safe operation is, key priority for all of us. And so having that controlled area and being able to operate there, that I think we're going to see more and more and more of. I have more people to talk to than I have time for most days, right now, because the interest is that high. And so I think those programs definitely within 12 years, I think, those programs are going to be very prominent. But the personal, where you go out and buy your own vehicle, I think cost is going to be very prohibitive for that as well. But, we'll see.
I'll just add in that the we'll see thing in the time frame, nobody really knows right now, but I can tell you the automotive companies we're talking to, owning your own vehicle is not even on the horizon. Paying for a subscription service is absolutely on the horizon moving forward. But, my concern comes down to, like, you bring it up down and, how you can head to Augusta and pick it up, but my concern for the state right now is that we're starting to see other areas in other states start to progressively move towards, working with autonomous vehicles. And, at the end of the day, we're vacation land, and most of the people get here by driving and throughout New England. And we need to start to embrace this issues now before it starts getting embraced heavier in other states, and then we're going to have to find a way to deal with it. We're already in the process of having to deal with, people out there with their blue crews and, all that stuff in all the cars today, which aren't recognizing problems, but it's, Dale, man, I hope it happens soon because it would be a lot of fun. That's all I have to say about that.
Sarah, let me ask you one more question. So I was on the AV task force a few years ago, and there are rules in the state of Maine for deployment, and I think we're going to relook at those because of all the technological progress. If a state or a town wanted to do this now, how long would it take?
So, we can, this is a great question. I would say the hardest part of the whole program, honestly, is contracting and planning. That's what takes the most time. If we were to say, we've already talked about it, we've established where we want this and how we want this, and we're in agreement that we're gonna move forward from the time of contracting, it can be done in as little as 3 months. My ops team doesn't like it when I say that, at all. I would say more realistically, 6 months is probably a good time frame. Essentially, we have to come out, we have to map the entire area. And it's not just, doing a very easy map. It is literally mapping each meter of the roadway. It's looking at the curb cuts for pickup and drop off points. It's looking at, every individual piece of where our customers are going to be interacting with that vehicle and how, and making sure that we can do that as safely as possible. Once all of that is done, we work with the third-party app provider. So we have an open API, and we can work with, a number of different transit app providers, whether it's Lyft, Tango, Move It, Via, whoever it may be. And so then we would integrate with that so that there's a reservation system for folks to use. And then lastly is the community engagement and the stakeholder engagement. We want to make sure that we're meeting with the right people. If I sign a deal with a transit agency, but I'm not talking to the city, eventually that's going to cause a problem. It's vice versa. So the more people that we can get involved in the program, we do EMS, emergency services, and first responder trainings. And all of those take time, of course. So the more that we can do that before we actually have a public launch, the better. And so, it takes time.
Hi, Sarah. I don't think you touched on this yet, but I was curious, what's the smallest city, least dense area that you've worked in so far with one of the pilots? Because, obviously kind of I showed earlier the map of Maine. It's a lot of rural and it's a lot of small town that are spaced out. Jonathan's done some work in the past for, options for locations that don't have fixed route transit. I know that you've done that as well. But I'm curious, it comes to workforce, infrastructure, all that stuff, for a main location. I'm curious, what's a comparable area that you've worked in the past?
Yeah, I would say Grand Rapids, Minnesota is probably our smallest right now. Like I said, population of about 11,000 there. Geographically, it's pretty spread out. And so our vehicles cover a large area geographically. We also have 70 stop points, pick up and drop off points there, for a couple of reasons. Number one, our audience there is very much senior. We also work with a lot of folks that have wheelchair needs there. And it's cold. Nobody wants to stand out in the cold for hours while you wait for a vehicle. So, we've got 70 different stop locations there. But I would say, no area is too big or too small. I think it all comes down to what the capacity for having that service is. Obviously, there's a cost for that service. And the fewer vehicles that you have, the more that cost is, because you don't have the overhead you still have the overhead that you don't have the vehicles to spread it across. So, you know, it is more costly the smaller the program, simply because, again, you have that same cost, but spread over fewer vehicles. So Grand Rapids, short answer. In Grand Rapids, they had 5 when they started. We're moving to 7.
Well, it is last call. Anybody, this is your chance. If not, I think it's noon and I think it's time for we're gonna have a break, I believe. Let's see, I was given some closing words to say here. Thank you, the TIDC conference team. So we're having lunch, and I believe we want to be thanking Avient for lunch, and we will return at, what's our return time? Is it 1:15?